journalist with a cause. And I've been so active against oppression, against radical Islamism, against the Muslim Brotherhood, and against CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations. Yep. That are the, I call them terrorists in suits, because these are the front of the Muslim Brotherhood. And CARE, who groomed Ilhan, groomed Rashida, and many others. And by the way, in 2020, we have more, CARE has been grooming more than 120 Rashida, Ilhan alike.
This is the Rubin Report, and I'm Dave Rubin. Quick reminder, guys, if you want to see all our videos early and ad-free, join us at RubinReport.com. But more importantly, joining me today is a first-generation American, a journalist, and now a candidate for Congress in Minnesota's 5th District, you know, the one currently represented by Ilhan OOmar, Dalia al Aqidi. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me here.
I am very glad to have you here. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to unearth here today. But first, let's do a little background. You are a first-generation American from Iraq. You lived under Saddam. You have a really interesting story. So I hand it to you.
Thank you.
Who is Dalia?
Dalia is a journalist. I grew up in a very secular family. I grew up in a family of arts. Both my parents are considered pioneers in Iraqi modern theater, and my uncle. So I've been in like TV business since I was a kid, and I grew up loving art. I grew up dancing ballet, and then in 1988, while yes, people say I haven't suffered personally from the regime. We had everything that we wanted, but we didn't have the freedom. And life without a freedom is, it's not worth to live life without a freedom.
So what does that mean? You're living a secular life, your parents are secular and successful, but you're not free. What does that actually mean?
We weren't, we didn't just fear Saddam. The way his regime was, it made you fear from your family members, or from your relatives, or from your neighbors. You couldn't even joke or mock Saddam or his family or his government. You'll be dead. So you had everything, but you can't speak. You can't give an opinion.
So for people in the arts, this has got to be doubly difficult.
Definitely. And this is, yes, my family didn't suffer, but millions of Iraqis have suffered, and that's the question. Is it just about me, or it's about the whole country, or it's about the whole people? And that's when we decided to leave. My mother, my very little brother, and myself. Even when we decided to leave the country, we couldn't speak at home. We would go, Mom and I would go somewhere, you know, to a park, and park our car and walk, just to plan how are we going to flee the country. None of my family knew that we were leaving.
Meaning that if you had talked at home, you think your family members would have ratted you out, or bugged, or...
Yes, wow. Because my mom is a very famous actress, and you never know who's listening to your phone calls, who's listening to your conversation, even at home.
Wow.
So you're too scared to say anything or to do anything. And we had friends that their houses were bugged, and they disappeared. They were executed for sometimes saying a joke or criticizing something. I mean, we couldn't even criticize the wars that Saddam decided to wage. We couldn't criticize the mass murder that he did in Kurdistan, which I'm half Kurdish. We couldn't. So this is not the life that anybody would want to live. It's suffocating when you cannot do something and when you want to make a difference but you can't. So that's how we decided to leave, and we just, each one of us took two suitcases, and that's it. We left everything behind.
Yeah, I mean, did you just hop on a flight, or what do you have to do to actually get out of an oppressive regime?
Thank you for asking this, because in Iraq you can't just...
I may have to know in case the progressives take over in America how you get out. You know what I
yes.
mean? So I'm doing this for self-preservation.
So if they, which they will never win, but if the socialists win, if you need to travel, you have to get a permission to travel, and they would write in your passport, like if I'm going to Athens, let's say, they would write, she will go to Athens. I cannot go anywhere else. If I go somewhere else and come back, I'll be in trouble. I'll be in jail. So what happened is, I was back then, because I studied stage acting and directing, so I was going to perform in Tunisia and Carthage festival. So I had the permission to leave. Mom had something, I think it was a movie or something in Cairo. So they didn't notice that, because we were in different delegations, that's what they call them. So they didn't notice. So Mom, because she had a baby, so, and she was supposed to stay more than 1 month, so she could take the baby with her. And we both left. After the festival, I ran away from my team, from the people I was with, and I gave the Lebanese delegation or my 2 suitcases. So nobody knows what I'm doing, because the head of this delegation told me, Dalia, somebody is going from the embassy to stay here. So I had to run away, and it was like, I was 20 back then. And for me, it was like the longest journey. I didn't know, because I left before Mom, so I didn't know if Mom left or not. I was too scared sitting. I was flying to Athens, and from Athens to Beirut, because that's where my aunt is. That's where I'm supposed to reunite with my mother and my brother. And because the embassies, the Iraqi embassies during Saddam's era, they were the centers of intelligence. So it's so easy for them to grab you inside the embassy, put you in a box, and ship you back home. So anyways, to make the story short, I got my luggage at the airport from the Lebanese friends, and then I sat down and I was like, please God, please God, please God, until we took off. And when we took off, that was the freedom, for my flight to freedom.
So that's when you flew. So you flew from Lebanon to America at that. Oh no, sorry.
No, I flew from Iraq to Tunisia, and from Tunisia to Athens,
to Greece,
and then and because I was Iraqi, I couldn't fly to the airport, because it was back then it was controlled by the Syrians. So I had to stay 8 hours in Greece, and then take another flight to Larnaca, Cyprus, and then take a 12-hour boat to Lebanon, to the Christian area. And then, I mean, it took me like 3 days, alone, not knowing anything, 20 years old, but I made it. When I reached there, nobody was waiting for me, not my aunt, I had the address, okay, take me there. I went there, it was during, the mess in Lebanon. So I reached the apartment, it was on the 16th floor, no electricity. I left my suitcases after 3 days of non-sleep. I took the stairs to 16th floor, knocked on the door. Mom, holding my brother, opened the door. I just looked and was like, my suitcases are down. And I slept for 2 days.
Unbelievable.
It's like it should be a movie, by the way.
It should be a movie. Well, that really seems to be only act one of the movie. Okay, so now you're in Lebanon. You've reunited with your mom. Now what's the plan?
I got an offer from in UAE, from TV in Sharjah. So we went to Sharjah, and that's when the Saddam invaded Kuwait. So I decided to do a show to show solidarity with the Kuwaitis against Saddam, of course.
So this is like 91 or something?
No, 1990.
90, okay.
And then we were contacted by the Iraqi opposition to work together to topple Saddam Hussein. Our part was to open a radio station called Radio of Free Iraq and Radio of the Iraqi Opposition. So we went to Saudi Arabia, and we were broadcasting from there. And that's when I met Chris Stevens, the late ambassador.
Yeah, so can you explain how Chris Stevens, so the ambassador to Libya, who obviously died in the Benghazi attack, can you explain a little bit about your relationship with him?
I've met him in Riyadh. I was in Jeddah, so I've met him in Riyadh, and we became friends. And whenever he comes to Jeddah, we would get together, and he's the one who made it happen, because at that time we weren't like, okay, we're living in Saudi Arabia. We had a residency in UAE because of my job, but because of our background, my mom, myself, and I had a death sentence issued against me when I was 20, and he's the one who was convinced and convinced me that I should go to the U.S. People like us should be in the U.S. to have a brighter future. And he worked so hard with the State Department to grant us political asylum.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that today I live here and he's not there. And I can never, never forgive Hillary Clinton for the loss of our 4 American patriots there. And at the end she said, at the end, what difference does it make? I've watched her hearings, and it was so sad.
What else should we know about Chris Stevens? I mean, there were 3 others as well, but he's the name that most people know.
He was such a beautiful human being. He learned Arabic, and he has that soft heart that would, he's very, not emotional, but he understands, you know. And he's the one who, when we talk, he's the one. And since then, I've been twice to the U.S. as a tourist. Mm-hmm. Because back then, when we were in Saudi Arabia, we had Saudi passports because we were doing this high profile work during that time. And he just was one of the best people I've ever met. He felt for the people, and that's for the past 3 years. I've been. I was doing a show from DC, a weekly show for 3 years. About it's called USL, US Libya. Mm-hmm. It's about US foreign policy and US strategies in North Africa in general, in Libya in particular. And the people I've worked with, the Libyans, that they remember him. And every Libyan I've met has told me stories about him. And he was so committed to this country and to the people, the Libyan people. And he never, he wasn't scared that this might kill him.
Yeah. What is going on in Libya now? Can you do like a quick recap? Because it's sort of, we did this military action, Benghazi, the whole thing, and it's like, Is it even a functioning country anymore?
It's not so far, and the problem is because the GNA, which is the NGA, GNA, Government of National Accord, is mainly controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. And then you have a general who was here in the United States as a refugee forever, General Haftar, who is so against radical Islamism, and then it's so there is still a civil war kind of, and the UN is, as we all know it, is a very failed organization that couldn't do anything, and it's just back and forth, but hopefully meetings are coming with the Europeans especially that could reach or could convince the Libyans to at least sit together.
For the average Libyan though, do you think things were better under Gaddafi?
It's never ever better under a dictator. Mm-hmm. Never. And I would say that about Iraq as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back to your story here. So when did you move to the United States?
So I moved to the United States in 1993. As soon as I moved, I started working in the media, my mother as well. And then I started doing U.S. media in Arabic. And it's so funny because I was the youngest one. Well, you know Voice of America, and Voice of America is a federal entity. So when I applied for it, there were like 400 something. And I just went and I did my test, whatever, and then a week later, because there was only one opening, and I got it. So even there, I know. I'm like, really? But the first day I was at the office, all of them were so much older than I am. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me and was like, who is she? Uh-huh. But the first hour I went on air, everybody came and it's like, now we can say, welcome to VOA. And that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Don't forget, I came here, I speak English. So I came to the US speaking English. So it wasn't that hard for me to just be there. Plus, I love the culture. I love this country. And it's home. That's where my heart is.
But I don't understand, Ali. I thought we're told all the time that America is an evil, racist, patriarchal state that no dark-skinned immigrant could come to and be treated fairly, especially if they come from the Middle East, a place like Iraq, something like that.
You listen a lot to Ilhan OOmar.
Are you telling me that's not true, and you love this country and work hard, you might be able to make it? Is that what you're telling me?
I've been here 3 decades. It was very easy for me to move somewhere and live if I didn't like it. Why would I stay here if I didn't like it? It's one of the greatest, it's the greatest country in the world. And
is it shocking to you, as someone that lived under what you lived under, had to do everything that you just laid out to even get here, when you hear all of this endless, ridiculous craziness about how horrible America is it just mind-blowing to you?
It provokes me that, first of all, let's talk about Ilhan OOmar. And that's very important.
We were going to get there. There's a lot of Ilhan OOmar stuff here.
Yes, yeah. Because I truly believe that when you go to a new country and this country becomes your home, I mean, at least be grateful that you live in a country that you have the right of every single American. You're no different than anybody else. You have the right and you have the duties, and that's how you should deal with it. Yet, there are immigrants from different countries. I'm not saying that they come here and they don't integrate with the communities, so they still live in small area that it's basically they brought everything from their country and they're not willing to participate or willing to be part of the community. And that's why I feel that organizations and should work on these communities to build bridges, to make them feel integrated in schools and at workplace and others. I mean, can you believe that someone who lives for 20 years in a country that can't even speak the language? How?
You mean it's not racist to say that maybe you should speak the language of the country you live in? Or at least try to?
I mean, this is ridiculous. Racist? You know, this is the country, this is the language of this country. You want to be a part of this country, part of the communities. You want to be, you want to provide, you want to fulfill your duties so you get your rights. I mean, this is, come on. I mean, at least speak the language.
Yeah.
At least read a sign.
All right.
This is ridiculous.
Okay,
I mean,
so we can link all of this to Ilhan, but before we get specifically into her, just tell me a little bit about what your general political philosophy is, because now that you're running for Congress, obviously it can't just be about I'm against Ilhan.
No, of course
we'll get to
not.
that. But just tell me a little bit about your own sort of political beliefs.
A question that I've been asked so many times, thinking that all immigrants and they should be Democrats. I'm a conservative person. I have conservative principles since I came here. So being a journalist, I know exactly what these two political parties are. So it's easy for me, I mean, to be conservative and to be Republican, and that's what I've been since I came here. I truly believe that decency should be back in our political arena and our lives. We've lost it. We've lost it, and this is so bad. I mean, the hatred that we see now, this was never the narrative in the United States. Yes, we disagree, but we don't hate each other. I don't hate somebody because he's a Democrat. Maybe I would never marry a Democrat, but that's, we'll be fighting all the time.
Yeah,
but
an honest politician.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? It's sad that you see in 2020 that hatred, that the toxic narratives coming from the far left. I wouldn't say coming from the Democrat in general, the far left and the progressive that are trying to destroy this country. People don't want this country to be a socialist country. People don't want to live in Cuba. People don't want to live in Venezuela. People don't want to live in these countries, or even Russia for this matter. So we have people that are praising these other countries. I mean, if you praise it and you like it so much, go be a senator there.
Yeah.
Or a congresswoman.
Right. Well, that's what I always say. Nobody ever leaves. Everyone
Exactly.
still wants to come here. Nobody's leaving. We're not stopping people from leaving, but they never leave. So, was it seeing what was happening with the far left progressives and the socialists? Is that really what drove you to get into politics, or was it specifically about Ilhan? And then we'll talk more about her.
Well, being a journalist, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I do foreign affairs, and I cover the whole world, and covering wars, conflict zones, human rights crisis, terrorist attacks all over the world, especially in Europe. I've been there, done that. So I know what kind of outcome would come from a narrative like this. The oppression, the hatred, the anti-Semitism. And I think Ilhan Omar made the biggest mistake of her life. It was right when she got elected. And she didn't wait for long to bring out all the ugliness.
Yeah, well, it was almost like day one. She suddenly flipped on all of these things, even though a lot of us could see it beforehand, obviously.
Yeah, but being there, so as a journalist, and I'm very active. I'm a journalist with a cause. And I've been so active against oppression, against radical Islamism, against the Muslim Brotherhood, and against CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations, that are the, I call them terrorists in suits, because these are the front of the Muslim Brotherhood. And CARE, who groomed Ilhan, groomed Rashida, and many others. And by the way, in 2020, we have more, CARE has been grooming more than 120 Rashida, Ilhan alike, that we're going to see that. So what happened with Ilhan, that of course I saw a couple of her interviews. She's always on Al Jazeera with Mahdi Mahdi Hassan, that I can't stand because of his views, of course. And he's so pro-Muslim Brotherhood. So I told my producers I want to interview her. We were so ignored. And I kept tweeting to her, it's like, okay, now we're a Muslim to a Muslim, woman to a woman, a former refugee to a former refugee, Anyways, I was ignored, and definitely she would not give me an interview. So I decided, you know what? Because I was doing my research on Muslim Brotherhood and on all this, because that's what I write about when I'm not on TV. I decided, I said, you know, I don't want her interview. I'm going to her district. And I went to her district and I spoke to the people, and I was going back and forth, spending time there. And even sometimes on Twitter, I would say, I'm going to be in this place from this time to it. Come and meet me, journalists and others. So I had all this research about this district way before anything else. And then 6 months ago, I decided to move there. And I started thinking that if I run, I would be the best, the only candidate that could beat her. Because of my background, I'm immune to her brand of identity politics, so I can push straight for the important issues and important discussions. And I'm not a shy person at all. And I could say, you are 1, 2, 3. Why did you meet Turkish President Erdogan before you were elected? What promises did you give him? Why you refuse to acknowledge the Turkish ethnic cleansing against the Armenians? Why were you outraged because President Trump decided to take justice to Qasem Soleimani? Why are you close to the Muslim Brotherhood? How much money have you been getting from CARE through CARE from Qatar and from the godfather of the Muslim Brotherhood? I could do what no other candidates could, basically, because if you tell her this, you're a white supremacist. You're a so,
well, she can accuse you of it, and I'm sure she will accuse you of it. It just
she could be my guest,
because
not very credible, because I grew up in, probably I know more about religion than she does, most likely.
Do you sense she's using religion as a shield?
Of course. She's using everything, and she has this victim card that she throws at you. Oh, I was 5, I have PTSD. I was 5 years old, and no girl should live at war, because any war and every war around the globe is because of the United States. So,
well, can you talk a little bit about the tactics? So you mentioned this Muslim Brotherhood CARE connection. We talked briefly before we started about Brigitte Gabriel, who's really been laying this thing out for years, what the plan is to infiltrate. You're now saying there's over 100 candidates that are being groomed by them. But I think one of the tactics, which you sort of hit on, is this constant desire to make everything feel crazy all the time. And it almost seems like every time Tlaib, in a way, Rashida Tlaib, is almost worse than Ilhan in this way.
Oh, yeah.
That everything she says seems to be designed to make maximum chaos. And is that really part of what they do?
That's the main thing that they do, and that's how they get support. I mean, Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, let me talk about each one because they have similar tactics but on different issues.
Sure.
Like Ilhan Omar, when she keeps feeding or tweeting or saying the same narrative over and over and over, that I represent every Muslim in the country. First, she's supposed to represent the 5th district.
Mm-hmm.
She's supposed to serve the 5th district, and she's done zero, nada, nothing. So when she goes and tells all the Muslims that the Americans hate us, the white people hate us, and they are so anti-Islamist, and that the Islamophobe, that the term that was invented by CARE.
Yeah.
So
we've talked about this a bunch on the show, but can you explain why the term specifically Islamophobe was invented and why it's such a confusing term?
To counterpart the anti-Semitism. So it's easier to say Islamophobe. So you could, okay, if you are an Islamophobe, that's why you're with others that hate all the Muslims in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Well, number one, if they hated all the Muslims, I've been here 3 decades as an adult.
Yeah.
How come nobody hated me? Well, I'm sure they hate me for different things.
People probably hate you for your ideas now. Ilhan's probably not thrilled with you.
I doubt that. But even after 9/11, like 9/12, I've never felt threatened because I was a Muslim. I'm an American, regardless of all these. I don't use this, and the problem is, or I'm forced to use a Muslim former refugee immigrants just to the identity politics that she uses.
Mm-hmm.
And I stated it once on Twitter that was picked up by everybody because she said, I am a hijab, that is not the right hijab that she claims to, and I've spoken to several American Somalis that this is not the Muslim hijab. I mean, she wears the hijab based on the people that she's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
She's meeting Muslims, she would cover, but hijab as in hijab, you cannot show your chest, you cannot show your hands. Muslims know that.
Right. Well, also plenty of the policies that she's for would not be policies that if you were a strict Muslim you would be for. I mean, abortion is a right?
Yes.
Sorry, abortion is health care.
Exactly. And it's human rights as well. So, but the problem with the people in the district that they don't follow what she does in DC on a daily basis. They don't know that she missed half of the votes that anyone else in the House. She doesn't vote for the district. You know when she votes? When it comes to foreign policies.
Mm-hmm.
That's when her votes. And can you believe that she voted against sending aid to Somalia? And then she went outside 10 minutes later, giving a press conference saying, oh, we did it. I mean, this woman is filled with lies. And again, her worst mistake that she didn't give me the interview. That what made me go back and forth, and that what made me decide that I'm going to cross the line between being a journalist to a politician.
So what are some of the other tactics that they use besides the just general, they want to cause chaos all the time and seem to always, everything they say seems to be designed to deepen that divide. What else are they doing?
The free handouts that on reality doesn't work. How could you give free health care to everybody. It doesn't work this way. I mean, where would they get the money from? How could you forgive all the student loans? What would they do for people that already paid their loans?
Yeah, we're not getting anything back, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. How? I mean, all these handouts and like free this and free this, and everybody's going to have a free house and it's going to have a free... I mean, this is ridiculous. We are not in China, and even in China, they don't do that.
Right. So, but can you explain a little bit more how the Islamists and CARE and Muslim Brotherhood, how they use the progressives? Like, it's like, because this is what I think a lot of people see this match made in hell. You're supposed to be for progressive, but all these other values are completely anti-progressive. But I don't think people really understand how this thing fully ties together.
Because the progressive don't have minds, their right mind. The Muslim Brotherhood is using the far left and the progressive for their own agendas. They're not doing it for the sake of the far left or the sake of progressive. No, they are using them big time.
Yeah.
And
do you think Bernie just doesn't get it? He just doesn't see it? Or he's so deep down the socialist ladder that he feels he has more in common with the Islamists than with an American, the average American, something like that?
I mean, supportive or the BDS, what do you expect? I mean, if you're an American, and if you are worried about what's happening in that region in general, you want to be close and you want to defend your closest allies, which at this point is Israel. Now more countries are coming, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt. Who's going to counter Iran's influence in the region? Nobody. And I cannot understand why someone like Bernie that does not care about our allies. I mean, imagine him being a president. What's going to happen? Oh my God, we'll have Iranian influence all over the place. Forget about something called peace in the Middle East, and we'll have wars in the Middle East between our ex-allies and our new allies.
Yeah. Is that the biggest weakness of what the progressives are selling? That it all kind of sounds good. It sounds good. We're for peace, right, Bernie? I'm for peace. We're going to sit down with everybody.
Yeah, but how? How? I mean, when President Trump went to or met with the North Korean leader, everybody went crazy. Everybody, including the Democrats, the far left, everybody went crazy. Okay, he's sitting and talking and having dialogue for peace. So always for them, it's okay. For us, it's a no-no.
So what else are you going to do in Minnesota's 5th District to supplant Ilhan OOmar?
Before that, I am planning, and I will represent every voter in this district, and not even a voter, every resident of the 5th District, because I am running to represent them. I'm planning to introduce Minneapolis and the 5th District to DC, not bring DC to Minneapolis and to that district. She failed to do anything for them. And for me, this is, I mean, she's supposed to be a public servant. A public servant means that you serve your constituents. And that's what I'm planning to do. I will represent every resident of the 5th District, regardless of color, ethnicity, faith, and political affiliation.
What do you think the Somali community thinks of her?
They are.
Yeah.
Seriously? They are sick and tired of her scandals, of her outside influences, of her narrative that she is tarnishing the reputation of every Muslim, every American Muslim, and they know it now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I speak to, in the district, I speak to Somalis and I speak to Muslims, and the majority agreed that she tarnished their reputation. people there are not waiting just for handouts. These are hard workers. All that they want is to have better lives, to send their kids to better school, to have a safe district.
You mean the same thing as every other American?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We don't need names. We are all Americans. I don't, when I travel, when people ask me, oh, where are you from? I don't say I'm an American from, I am an American, period. And that's the values that I have are the American values. And the people I love are the Americans. Does it mean that I hate Iraq? It's always that's what I was born, and these are my extended families. But when it comes to my heart is here. That's why I've been living here for 30 years, and I'm not planning to go anywhere. And that's why I have only one passport, which is the U.S. passport.
Will you come on stage with me? I have a show in Minneapolis for my book tour. In May.
I would love to.
All right, I'm going to bring you on stage. We're going to do some stuff.
If you change your mind, I'll sue you.
Well, now it's been recorded. All
Okay.
right, I'll get you the date, but I'll be in Minneapolis around the May 10th or so.
I would
like
be
that.
honored
Yeah.
to do so.
That
I would be
great.
honored to do so.
Ilhan will not be happy with us.
No.
I'll invite her too, though. If she's watching right now, she's welcome to come on stage with both of us. And
Well,
we'll see what
Ilhan, I've been inviting you for.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you can talk to the camera
yes,
right there.
a cup of coffee forever. So I think maybe we should have coffee in the neighborhood that you don't live there anymore because you moved to DC. So I'm in Minneapolis. Where is she? She's in DC.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other scandals related to her? Because there's a lot of weird stuff out there. And for the last 2 years, it was only these I don't want to say very far right. It was seemingly far right outlets. I don't even want to say that. There were outlets on the right that are ignored by mainstream that were saying there was this weird thing with her and her brother and passports and this whole thing. Can you kind of get me up to speed on what we know?
I mean, usually I don't speak about it, but it's. I mean, there are investigations for about so many things, like 3, 4. For me, one is many.
Yeah.
And especially about the immigration fraud, because apparently based on a community leader in the Somali community came out and including pictures and let me tell you what happened. And then hopefully the investigation would lead to, because she would never talk about it, and it's like, oh, this is so appalling.
Yeah. Well, she's under investigation right now.
Definitely.
For immigration fraud.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Apparently, she had a brother who lived in the United Kingdom, in London. And according to her close friends that went on the record saying that because her brother was gay, so she decided to bring him to the U.S., being within the Somali community, so maybe he'll get killed. This is the one who defends the LGBT community.
Yet she wants to cure her brother.
By being in this community. So he came, but as a British citizen, he cannot live here. So basically, they got married, and to give him, well, it's not like for any other reasons. I mean, it's committing an immigration fraud, and that's how he got his citizenship. She brought him to cure him. And basically she used to say, according to her friends and to the people that went on the record, saying that he's been around the wrong crowd in England. So it's better for him to come here and be around us.
Right. Okay, so putting aside the part about the gay brother and the curing, which is bad enough in and of itself, especially by her own progressive ideals, where she's supposed to be for gay people, but that's not criminal in and of itself. Marrying your brother for purposes of getting him
immigration
status is immigration fraud, and this is under investigation right now.
Yes.
Do you think it's bizarre the way the mainstream media seems to be covering this up, or is that just sort of congruent with everything else that
I think we got used to the mainstream media, sadly, but we got used to it. Have we ever heard anything about anybody? About progressive? About a Democrat? No. It's always about the us, the conservatives, the Republicans. It's always about us. What about all the scandals that were around a large percentage of the Democrats? It goes under the radar, and they would, even if they mention it, they would mention it in times that are not very popular. So and then that's it. And
Right.
that's
Well, instead, the New York Times writes a piece about the new hip artist in town, Hunter Biden.
yeah.
You saw that one in the Times? He's
Yep.
the new hot artist in town. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump Jr. wouldn't get the same coverage in
No.
the New York Times.
No, not Trump, not his kids, not his children.
Does it feel in a weird way? So for someone that was a journalist under a dictatorship, does that, or came from a country that was a dictatorship, when you see the way our media behaves right now,
Similar. Exactly similar. I mean, they always try to defend, all the mainstream media, they pretend to defend the First Amendment. But what they're doing is so anti the First Amendment. Freedom of speech is the most important thing. They are just doing, and I know it. I know what that narrative of the progressives and of Ilhan or of Rashida, what they bring. I've seen the consequences of the hatred. I've seen the consequences of oppression and of division. I ran away from it, and I was fighting it for 31 years. And I am, as an American citizen, would stand against it. I was standing against it, and I will until the day I die.
no. Does anything about the machine that you're going up against scare you in any way? Just, I mean, at the most human level. I mean, I know you've been through worse in a lot of ways, but
I'll tell you.
But it's a huge machine.
Especially when it comes to radical Muslims and to the Muslim Brotherhood and to the people behind the Muslim Brotherhood. Please know, if you hear or if you read that I committed a suicide, I'm not suicidal. I'm very happy. So look for them, because definitely I'm not. We've seen suicides here and there lately, and the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist group, and the first thing would be my priority when I get elected in November, that I will make sure the Muslim Brotherhood would be designated as a terrorist group, such as several countries. Egypt, that's where the Muslim Brotherhood was formed.
Yeah.
Egypt consider it, and other countries in the region consider it a terrorist group, and we should I'm not trying to scare people, but we shouldn't be afraid of calling things with their real names. And that's not Islamophobe, that's not anti-anything. That's being anti-terrorism and anti-radicalism. And if I don't stand against it, who else? I know them, I'm from them.
Yeah. So as a conservative and as a Trump supporter, I thought Trump was supposed to hate Muslims. Doesn't he hate Muslims? Doesn't he hate immigrants? Doesn't he hate brown people? That's what mainstream media is telling us.
Exactly. Look what I'm doing and where I'm running. And most of my friends, most of them are Republicans and are conservatives that we've been friends forever. And I've been doing some work with other think tanks, and especially when it comes to Islamism and the radical Islamism. And I speak to people, even to Muslims, and I speak to the Somalis in my district, telling them that she is not helping you. If you think that she's helping you, she is not. And they agree, because she has done nothing for them. I mean, she's for open borders. Do we, especially now with the coronavirus, what kind of a country that doesn't control its borders? What kind of a country that is?
What do you think about putting Ilhan specifically said, just a first-generation immigrant that comes to America that sort of has the gall to then just try to undermine everything.
She's doing it for herself,
Yeah.
and she's polishing her international profile. I mean, she was more concerned to be on the cover of Vogue than doing anything for her constituents. She is, I mean, I wonder, why is she sitting on the Foreign Affairs, the House Foreign Affairs Committee? What does she know other than the hatred to Israel?
She knows some people did something.
Exactly.
Right? She knows that one.
Yeah, and I sent her a message from CPAC when I spoke that, you know what, some people are going to do something that will make you a one-term congressman.
So her endless hatred of Israel. You just spoke at AIPAC. You gave what I thought was a pretty incredible speech. And one of the things you really focused on, actually, was what's happening to the Christians in the Middle East, which is sort of a forgotten piece of the whole thing. I guess, can you talk a little bit about just generally her obsession with Israel, but then more just what's happening with the Christians in the Middle East and everything else?
Well, let's talk about the BDS that she introduced to the House. I mean, her hatred to not only Israel, to all the Jews in the United States, and to every American that doesn't follow her narrative or that supports Israel. There is a very big food company in our district in Minneapolis called General Mills. General Mills does business with Israel, and
they make Cheerios. Everybody
yes,
loves Cheerios.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that company is employing more than 10,000 people from our district. Because of her hatred or her obsession with Israel, she is willing to lose the jobs. I mean, to make the people of her district lose the jobs. I mean, what does it take? 10 jobs? 10,000 jobs? She does not care. She wants to satisfy her hatred to the Jews, to the Americans that support Israel, and to Israel itself. One mistake she did when, if you remember, when she and Rashida were invited by Muftah, which is a terrorist group, to visit Gaza. Mm-hmm. And thank God the Israelis decided that this is not the good idea, because Rashida played in the name of the government. She would go to Gaza to bash Israel and bash Jews.
Right. Again, the only place in the Middle East that has any of the seemingly progressive values that they might share. Pretty sure Hamas, not very progressive, right?
Hamas? Well, define progressive when it comes to bombings and when it comes to missile attacks. No. Although, before that, Ilhan tweeted that Palestinians in the Congress had spoken. Since when we have Palestinians in our Congress? She didn't even bother to say the Americans from Palestinian origins. No, the Palestinians in Congress. Which made me like, do we have Palestinians in the Congress? I thought just we're supposed to have Americans in our Congress.
Yeah. The best was, you remember when Tlaib tweeted the thing about being the first Palestinian in Congress, and then Justin Amash, who's the libertarian in Michigan, said, oh, well, actually, my father's from Palestinian descent. I just don't make a big deal about it.
Exactly.
Because I'm American.
Exactly. Although I do feel for the Palestinian people, because I truly believe that they are held hostages between Hamas, the terrorist group, between the corruption of the Palestinian authorities and the corruption of Fatah. And it's time for them. And they've tried. But they've tried, especially in Gaza, where Hamas rules everything. You know what they do? Hamas, they would bring the truck in the middle of a residential area to launch missiles and leave a minute later. When Israel countered the attack, who would die? Of course them. The Palestinian people are sick and tired of this. They deserve and they want to live in prosperity, and that's what the new plan that President Trump offered. And of course it was rejected by the Palestinian Authority and everybody else. I mean,
so Trump got basically 20 plus countries, if not more, on board this. He basically got Israel on board it. But it was pretty much Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, Ilhan, and
Rashida,
and I don't know, and a couple others that were against it.
Because
and
this
then it's just
plan,
dead on arrival.
It's based on reality. It's not like we've been doing the same, you know, that the U.S. has been doing the same plan and keeps repeating it over and over and over, expecting to have a different outcome. I mean, that's so foolish, because if you have this plan, it didn't work, it hasn't worked for decades, so bring something else. And what's great about this plan, I mean, it gives the Palestinian people the opportunity to prosper. And believe me, if they're not hungry, if they have more job opportunities, that's what they want. Mm-hmm. They don't want to wipe Israel from the face. Well, Hamas does, Rashida does, Ilhan and Bernie, definitely. These people.
Right, but not the average Palestinian,
no.
Obviously. Yeah.
No, do you think they enjoy their lives? No. And do you know how all these Palestinian leaders are living? They're living la vida loca.
Yeah,
they have the best houses, the best cars, they have...
Abbas has quite a castle over there.
Exactly, and Hanan al-Shrawi as well, all of them. And the people are begging for jobs. And this would work, and especially now, more than ever, that Arab countries and Muslim countries are ready to normalize the relations and ties with Israel.
Do you see that as like a mind-blowing thing, that you've got all these Arab countries now that are starting to have different bilateral relations with Israel, and yet we have American Congress people who are more against it than Arab countries who've technically been at war with Israel?
Well, Rashida could feel free to move to Gaza and fight there. And Ilhan could feel free to go to Qatar maybe, or Turkey, with the godfather of the Muslim Brotherhood. Just don't spread your toxic rhetoric between us, because nobody's gonna stand this, and especially the consequences of what they are doing.
Yeah. All right, so what else are you going to do for the good people of Minnesota's 5th District? I think we've laid out why they shouldn't vote for these people.
A lot. My issue number one is immigration reform, and that's not anti-Muslims or anti-immigrants, and that's what President Trump is doing. I'm the best candidate to defeat her and to help the administration to implement all these laws, because if I go talk to an immigrant or to an illegal immigrant and I'll tell her that, you know what, there are reforms are coming, and that doesn't mean that you'll be thrown out. It's just we have to be fair for the people that came here legally. We have to be fair for the people that waited for years and years in order for them to get the asylum. We'll work on the immigration, definitely, reform. I am 100% supporter of the wall, and especially now with everything that is happening. And if you think we're just trying to stop certain people from entering, no. Terrorists could go easily to Mexico or to other places and cross our borders. Mm-hmm. That's number two. Safety is extremely important in our district. Ilhan OOmar, and I hate to keep bringing her, but she calls for less police presence. in our district, while crime rate is going up sky high. We can improve the security throughout a legislation that would provide more funds. We can use all these new technologies instead of just putting people on the street. Security technologies are the best. There are programs that could tell you in this area where a gun was fired, right there, live. We can do a lot. We can support the people of this district. Healthcare, I could promise that I would work with the administration, but you have the right to choose your healthcare provider. I'm not just giving handouts. We could push for several companies that provide healthcare to their employees. The companies that are treating the employees as independent contractors. We can do something. If you work certain hours for this company, you're no more independent contractor. So we can work with these companies to provide healthcare, and it's the choice of the person. I don't need to be forced to go to Dr. A, not to Dr. B. I don't need to be forced to go to hospital C, not hospital D. It's my my choice.
Individual choice and competition. You're a real radical.
Well, yeah. And small businesses in our district is suffering a lot, and we need to give the freedom of or the choice of being an employed, of being a business owner. The district could use a lot, and it's a beautiful. I fell in love with it from the day one that I arrived in Minneapolis. It's such a beautiful place, that beautiful people, and it could. I mean, Minneapolis should be just like LA, a metropolitan area that all tourists from all over the world would want to come and see. It has all the ingredients. We need to build more the infrastructure of this city, and it will be on the map like Florida, New York, DC, LA. It should be on the tourism map. Maybe not with the coronavirus and stuff, which, by the way, all the far left is criticizing the government and the administration, President Bush, for not doing anything. Excuse me. I mean, asking for 2.6 billion, I'm not sure it's 2.5 or 6, to support the research and to enhance all the medical research and medicine. That's not good. Why not good? I mean...
Well, the orange man did it, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, and I think it's sad. I mean, a long time ago, the Democratic Party used to be a decent party because it's all about two parties. I'm willing, and that's what I'm going to do for my district, to build new coalition, to reach not to the other aisle, to the last aisle on this planet, if that's what it takes to provide the services that my constituents do. I don't insult Democrats. I don't keep insulting them like she keeps insulting the Republicans, even though she had Republicans in our district. So I'm willing to build much bigger coalitions. I'm willing, and I will do everything bipartisan, and that's how the country should. I mean, it's politics 101.
I have a feeling I'm looking at the next congresswoman from Minnesota's 5th district.
You are.
And as long as schedules line up, I'm bringing you on stage in Minneapolis in May. I wish I could remember the date offhand, but we're going to link to the event right down below so people can join us. And for more on Dalia, go to daliaforcongress.com.